if the first thing out of your mind is always out of your mouth is, I know. When someone's explaining something, I know. That person learns nothing. That person is stuck in a bubble. They are surrounded by so many blind spots, and that person will never amount to much. All right, Kris.
You speak German, right?
Ich spreche Deutsch.
When you learned German, how did that process go?
You know, I actually took 3 years of German in high school.
Yeah?
And never figured it out. Like I could never put any sentences together.
Can I qualify? Did you really take 3 years?
I took 3 years in high school.
Yes, but was it more like 15 minutes a day?
No. Like this
years?
was legit. Like this was a class. Like I learned probably 100 different words in German. They taught me conjugations, grammar that just never made any sense.
So why didn't you learn it? 3 years.
Dude, it didn't happen until I moved to Germany. Within 6 months of living in Germany, I was completely fluid.
Why? What's the difference?
Immersion. Like immersion is always going to be a secret of the most successful people on the planet. They get hyper-focused, what some might call obsessed, and it ends up being a secret of the successful.
So why are we talking about language? Because it's a learned skill like many other things that people are after. Kris, how often do people come up to you and want to know, how'd you become successful in real estate and business?
Dude, people look up to me today and they're like, oh my gosh, like, Kris, you have it all. Like you have this amazing life and you have all this stuff and you've traveled the world. I had friends that I hadn't seen in a long time come over to my house and there's a map in my home that shows all the places that I've traveled in the world. And they're like, oh my gosh, you've been like everywhere. And I'm like, dude, yeah, and I have. And how did that happen? Dude, there was a secret to it.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going to go. When people ask you that, they're assuming there's a secret sauce or a hidden vehicle that will get you there. Yeah. And I wanted to talk about this a little bit today, about how to become successful in real estate.
By the way, Carson, people get it wrong. They always think it's the vehicle.
Right.
Which means you got lucky. It's the vehicle. It's what you did that made the money that matters. I'm like, actually, it's the character of the person wielding the vehicle that determines its veracity.
Okay, so let's talk. Let's dive into this, Kris. When you got started in real estate, same thing with talking about learning German. Did you do the high school approach, which is, you spend a few hours each day?
I tried a little bit. Like I started taking some courses and I started reading some books and dude, all they did was get me hot and bothered. Like they got me all excited about but it just was like foreplay. I'm like, when do we actually get like,
Oh wow, this is a great metaphor.
When are we going to score a home run here? Because dude, I want to do a deal and I want to make money. I want to stop talking about it. Like, let's go out and make it happen.
So did you do 3 years of taking real estate courses?
100% no. Dude, I had already learned in my young life that if you want to work for someone else, get good grades and go to college. And if you want to be rich, you have to work for yourself, but don't make the mistake of reinventing a wheel. You go find someone that has already figured it out and then you go mimic them. Like that's what successful people do.
And isn't that kind of what you did with learning German? Didn't you go to where all the Germans live?
Dude, 100%.
Learn from those that were doing the thing
3
that you
years
wanted
in
to
high
do?
school, so worthless compared to just 6 months of being in the country. So in other words, Rosetta Stone, I wouldn't recommend to anyone. Just freaking get on a plane, live in the country, and force yourself to not speak your language. Speak theirs. You're going to learn it.
So when you first started getting into real estate, I mean, you dove deep. You even got so far as to get licensed in real estate.
Well,
isn't necessarily.
I got a lending license.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I didn't get a realtor's license.
Okay.
In hindsight, I wish I had 100 to 1.
How come?
Well, first of all, everyone should understand that if you're going to be a real estate investor, you can double dip legally at least one time, but only up to one time.
How does that work?
Well, so dude, when you do the game of real estate, you got to be licensed to do title work. You've got to be licensed to be a loan officer or work with banks to put a loan in place. You've got to be licensed to represent buyers and sellers on homes. That's what realtors do. So you've got these different licenses to choose from. And they say that when you do your own deals, you're allowed to leverage up to one of those licenses, which means in addition to owning the property as the investor, you can get paid some of the fee money for actually transacting the deal. And at the time, I remember a friend of mine already had his realtor's license, and we're like, oh, we're going to team up. I should get my lending license. And I wanted to do that because there was this young dude who was like, he had it all going for him. He looked hot. He drove the fancy cars. He was always like traveling, taking trips. He was a super successful loan officer. And I learned not to trust him, meaning on the day of one of my closings, he was in Hawaii instead of being there for me. And I learned by asking questions that he had charged me almost 3 points of yield spread premium. He had basically jacked my rate up substantially so that the bank would pay him more money on the back end. And I became hugely skeptical, like, oh my gosh, someone is screwing me over, Kris, because you haven't dove in deep enough. You haven't obsessed enough. You don't understand enough about the way this game works. So I said, you know what? If I'm going to get a license, I'm going to get the one that I don't understand. Now, in hindsight, that was a mistake, but kid you not, I became an expert at the lending game over my next 500 loans. So I learned a lot. And frankly, I got to make a lot of money. In fact, in addition to my real estate paying me a lot of money, I had a ton of money come to me just from being the loan officer on my own deals. And then I'd start helping people with their deals. But in truth, if you want to know the license for, in my opinion, who works the least to make the most, realtors.
Really?
Oh yeah, dude. If you have that game figured out, if you had a supply of deals, if you had a way of as an investor, I got to the point where I was buying a house every single month. I'm like, if I'd been the realtor on my own deals and, think about cashing in 3% on a $200,000 home, dude, that's $6,000 a pop. You're doing 12 deals a year. What's 12 deals times $6,000? That's an extra $80,000 a year that I could have been making.
So, but let's talk about this idea, because statistically, most realtors, and for those listening, I'm using air quotes, because there's a lot of realtors that maybe are going to transact 1.5 homes in their entire
Their entire
career.
life is going to summarize as 2 deals only.
Because there's a lot of people that see this potential for money and they kind of I'll try this. But Kris, my experience with you is you don't try much.
Don't try anything.
You dive in.
I'm either going to win or I'm not going to do it in the first place.
Right. Okay, so
how 100%
does someone,
all committed or not at all?
How does someone be a realtor that makes that kind of money instead of just a wannabe
Dude,
realtor?
I got my own real estate brokerage team. I got people watching me all over YouTube that find me and actually join my team, and I freaking train them how to kill it as a realtor. I show them how to do it the right way. I show them how to find business. And you know what? Then as an investor, when they're doing deals, guess what they get the benefit of? Why not make an extra $5,000 or $10,000? And by the way, then when you know a couple of buddies, when you get in the game, when you dive in and you're playing the investing game, is it possible that you dig up 5, 10, 15, 20 deals on the side every single year? Dude, in time, that's how it's oh yeah, I score an extra $100,000 or $200,000 a year just playing around on the side. But by the way, if you want to do that successfully, you build a team, you outsource the work, you keep some of the money, you pay others to do everything, because it's all about time reclamation. You want leverage, you want to get your time back, dude. And so I show realtors how to play the game successfully. I'll train them from the ground up, or I'll have very successful realtors that will actually recruit onto my team because they want proximity to someone that's done $1 billion in transactions.
So Kris, you have this ability. It's the secret sauce we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know today, we're talking about all these different things, learning a language, getting into real estate, being a realtor. How do you do it? How do you, I would call it you dive into the deep end real quick and become an expert super quick.
I'm going to use slightly different words.
Okay.
You have amateurs and masters.
Uh-huh.
Amateurs get paid in lessons. Masters get paid in money. And everyone always jumps into a new game as an amateur, not really understanding it, hoping to make money, when really you're going to get paid largely in lessons, because you're going to get punished for what you don't know. You're going to be taxed for what you don't understand. Just like I was taxed from my loan officer that charged triple points on the back end so that he could take home a fat $12,000 check sitting on the beach, his mojito in Hawaii, while I was sitting there feeling screwed, thinking, I'm never doing a deal with you ever again.
So how do you do it?
All right.
How do you be a master?
I'm going to share a game here. You need to understand that it doesn't matter whether we're talking about being a successful investor, a successful realtor, owning your own business, or even climbing the corporate ladder and working for somebody else. There is a single characteristic that always lends itself to those who climb to the top.
Well, and I think this applies across the board, even for athletes.
Oh yeah.
And I remember, Kris,
how do you become top in your game?
This past weekend when we were at that steakhouse, I asked you, if you had to do life over and you couldn't do the same path, you couldn't do real estate, you couldn't do business, what would you want to do? And you said,
I don't know. I told you several.
You said Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
You're I could see myself being an actor. And I was like, you'd crush it at that game. But it's because I know with this secret sauce that you're about to reveal, you would crush it at anything.
Well, so here's the deal, Carson. You have to go for mastery, and you've got to get out of Amateurville as quickly as possible. And the only way to do that, the only way to compress time, there's two tricks. The first one is you have to become obsessed. Malcolm Gladwell, mastery, 10,000 hours. I don't have 10,000 hours. That's years. If I work on this full time, that's a 5-year gig. How do I get there faster? You get there faster by, number one, you hack the system by going to the most successful and make sure that you're learning from them, because you can shave off 80% of your Malcolm Gladwell hours if you're working with a true master, which always means go to the top and find the most successful person and freaking work for free if you have to, clean up their scraps. Like, that's one of the secrets, but the other one is you have to obsess. I have been accused my entire life of a misdiagnosis. They're like, Kris, you do so many things, you must have ADHD. And I actually have quite the opposite. I don't know if there's a name for it. If you figured it out what it is, please drop it in the comments of this episode. I have a hyper focus disorder, which means that I'll focus on something. And if you make a sound in my vicinity that sound does not belong to what I'm focusing on, I will freaking turn at you with my rage face and get pissed and say, please be quiet. I didn't learn this until years ago. I'm doing this seminar, right? I'm in front of a large audience of people. And I had just gotten kicked off. It was me like an hour-long presentation. And this was in my early days, right? I'd only done maybe 100 million in real estate. And there was this sound from the audience. It went like this. And I'm like, it's starting to drive me insane because I can't focus. My brain just says I'm focusing on what I'm doing. And I'm like, whoever's making that sound, can you please shut the heck up or turn it off? And this guy in the back with a ventilator and an oxygen tank, looks like he was in his 70s or 80s. He said, I'm sorry. If I turn it off, I might die. Kris. And in that moment, I felt like such a schmuck. Very, very young, early 20s, fairly handicapped, Kris, if I will, uneducated, naive. But the point was I learned something. Some people sometimes, you look at successful people, sometimes you're like, all right, like, are you a normal dude that hacked and figured out? Or maybe is there like some X factor about you? And I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of things I suck at. There's a lot of things I'm super dumb about, but there's something that I do believe I have an X factor about me that anyone can develop, by the way. And it's my hyper focus. I won't call it a disorder. It's my hyper focus superpower.
I actually have your diagnosis, Kris. So ADD is attention deficit disorder.
Okay.
And the inverse of deficit is surplus.
They have this?
You have ASD. No, I'm creating it right now.
Oh, thanks.
Kris Krohn has attention surplus disorder.
Okay, great. Yeah, so basically, this leads for me very naturally to obsession. I don't like letting go of whatever I'm working on until it is at a satisfactory level. And I can't get it satisfactory unless I work with the best. I have people all over the world that follow my social, and then they'll click the links below or the link in bio. They'll talk to my team. And when you do that, you should always ask, how do I breathe Kris Krohn's air? Like, how do I get in his airspace to learn from him? Like, how do I get proximity to him? Like Tony Robbins talks about proximity is power. And it's this idea that you can accomplish, you can make more money through one relationship than lifetimes of working for somebody else. So obsession, what is it about? It's about staying focused and then hacking the most brilliant people in the space. And that's one of the things that you need to do to create sustained focus. Because Carson, here's the problem. The problem we have in this world is, you might have heard of this paradigm, but there's 4 phases to it. And it's the conscious competency, process. And it basically says we as human beings are very, very unconscious human beings. Like, have you heard like, oh yeah, humans only use like 3% of their brain. If we used all 100%, we would be like,
walking
mutants.
Through walls.
We're walking through walls, right? Or floating. The reality is we have the ability to hack more of our mental ability. And what it does is it comes through mastery and hyper focus of different skills. I've mastered now, according to Malcolm Gladwell, 15 different skills. It started with sales, it became real estate investing, it was borrowing money, then it was learning how to mentor, then it was breaking through limitations and becoming an influencer. Like skill upon skill upon skill are things that I've mastered. And here's what ends up happening. You go from being a very unconscious human being to a conscious human being. But here's how it actually breaks down into 4 steps. The first one is you have to become aware of your blind spots. See, some people, they're making a huge go at success, but success isn't coming their way and they can't figure it out why. I'll tell you why. They have unlearned lessons and they're hiding behind blind spots. So to break this pattern down, it starts with becoming unconsciously competent. You have to know that you don't know. The most dangerous information in the world is what you don't know. Only problem is you don't know it. You don't know that you don't know, and you're being screwed over 100 times over, but you're clueless that it's even happening. So you have to start by waking up and saying, aha, there's stuff out there that I need to know, and I don't even know what it is. So you wake up a little bit.
It's almost like recognizing like your humility, that there are things that you don't know.
And that's called unconscious incompetence. You know that you don't know. I don't mean incompetent like you're an idiot. I mean it like
a little bit
like you don't know it. And because you don't, you're being disadvantaged. So you have to, but we have this I know mind. It's one of the biggest problems that we walk around. We're like, I know. It's this mind. There's no beginner mind. There's no, I'm learning something for the first time. It's like, no, I've heard it enough. If the first thing out of your mind is always out of your mouth is, I know. When someone's explaining something, I know. That person learns nothing. That person is stuck in a bubble. They are surrounded by so many blind spots, and that person will never amount to much because they're stuck in their unconsciousness and they're incompetent. They don't even know that they don't know. But if you're listening to this podcast, you're like, whoa. What is it that I should know that I don't know? You're awakening into the second step, which is called conscious incompetence. I now know that I don't know. There's a world of a difference. You transition from one world to the next when you go from, I don't know that I don't know, into I now know that I don't know. I know that I'm missing information. And then you can move into the third category, conscious competence, which is I'm moving from incompetence in my conscious state, in my aware state, to a competency of it. For example, let me give you an example. Let's say that I want to be a successful real estate investor. Yeah. And I have no idea what that means. When I'm unconsciously incompetent, I don't even know that I could be a real estate investor. You listen to Kris's podcast, you're like, wait a second. I didn't even know you could do that. I didn't know you could make $100,000 on a deal. I didn't know that you could flex for a matter of hours and make 20 times more money than you do at your job. And all of a sudden there's this awakening and you move into this idea of now I'm consciously incompetent. I now know that I don't know, but I want to.
Right. And
I know what I want to chase.
Yes, you know what to be chasing.
So then you sign up, you work with me, you partner with me, we start doing deals, you start making money, and all of a sudden you're like, I now know what I didn't know. I'm now competent and I'm aware of it. So I'm consciously competent. And once you're consciously competent, if you will then with obsession, focus, stay on it until you've mastered it, eventually you will become unconsciously competent. And remember, you started unconsciously incompetent. You're now consciously competent. Let me give you an example of that. I make money without thought because I've set it up for my world to be that way. I don't open the fridge and struggle with the bad foods that I shouldn't eat because I've overcome that. I'm not having a conscious argument with myself like, oh, what should I do? It's like, wait a second. Like, I don't even have to think about it. I'm not reaching for that. I'm not reaching for the ice cream. I'm past that. I'm done. I shed my fat suit. I don't want that anymore because I've learned. And the goal, Carson, is for us to go from not knowing what we need to know, figuring out, hacking it, mastering it, and getting so good at it that we do it as easy as involuntary breathing. And we've become it, but it is now effortless, without effort, doesn't require even a conscious thought.
Well, and Kris, I think we're actually talking about a different type of knowledge here than just having it in your head. Because when you become consciously incompetent, it's almost like you're starting to be aware of the things you don't know. I would say that when you're unconsciously competent, you have made it a part of who you are as an individual. Would you agree?
I would. And I want to build on it for a moment because on the one hand, I'm talking about knowledge. But you know what? There is an intelligence far greater than knowledge. And it's emotional intelligence. And this is the knowledge that most people like. This is what they're missing.
Well, and it's because we're never taught it.
Knowledge is not monetizable unless it is backed by powerful emotional drive. So if you're like, hey, Kris, do you want to work with this person that has 19 PhDs and they're really smart on this topic? Or do you want to work with the person that has no PhDs, no masters, no bachelors, but they have endless hunger? They are so unsatisfied. They're so hungry that they're going to stick to it no matter what. If I had to choose who I'm going to work with, I don't want to work with the PhD 19 times over. Give me the person, because there's an emotional intelligence that they're tapping into. Dude, that's all I had going for me. I was freaking stupid as they come in just about every area of life. Look at my college grades and it'll tell you that, man, yeah, Kris is a little bit of a bozo in a lot of categories, Clowns Incorporated. But I had so much insatiable hunger that you could take a guy that looked like a joke and society told him he was a joke. And then I turned myself into something. And that's because I had one thing. I had obsession. I had this disorder, right? Like I had the ability to freaking focus. And it was like, you heard of the monkey that's in the jungle and it wants the banana. And so they set up this trap. You put your hand in the trap where as long as you're making a fist, you can't get your fist out. The monkey reaches his hand in the hole. He grabs the banana and he can't get out because he refuses to let go of the banana. In probably a negative way, I'm the freaking monkey that will not let go of the banana until I figure it out. Dude, that's why I was financially free by 26. I look at my net worth. My net worth is increasing 8 figures plus a year right now. And it's because of this one skill.
Kris, the monkey is a perfect example of unconsciously incompetent. Because if you are truly recognizing your incompetence, you say, how come I can't get the banana out? Oh, I need to let go.
Yeah.
Tip the jar over. And now I know exactly how to get the banana out.
Yeah, let me build on that. I want to give you something I heard from Jason Capital on emotional intelligence. I think he says it best. I don't know where he got it from, but he basically like draws a map of the 5 steps, the cycles of change. And I think it's important to talk about here because I love obsession or focus because it gets me through the hard times, because most people they don't understand what the real path of success looks like. You take your idol. You take this someone that you think has figured it out. It could have been a Steve Jobs character or a Bill Gates or a Kobe Bryant. Like you take someone that is like genius in the space that you admire. And I promise you, what sets them apart is not raw talent. What sets them apart is that they just wouldn't give up. Now, by the way, to be the best in the world, they may have had some unfair advantages, but their greatest advantage is that if you do the documentary of their life, I've never met one of these people where it was like, you know what? I was really young and I just decided I wanted to figure it out and I clicked 3 buttons and I became a billionaire. That is the story of none of them. Their story is this super inspiring, like I spent it all, I went into debt, I lost everything, my family disowned me, nothing was working for me, everyone told me I was gonna be a freaking failure, and now today I'm the best in the world. And what they had going for them was this obsessive, focused nature that couldn't let go. So here's the way Jason Capital puts it. I saw this on TikTok, so I want to give him the credit for it. I really liked it. He says, when you set out to achieve something in the beginning, you have what's called uninformed optimism. Or in other words, this is going to be easy, right? Like, I'm going to do this thing. I want this thing. I want to become a day trader. And I want to make, 50% each day on my money. And that way I can just literally trade for a half-hour day and like sit on the beach. I can work from anywhere in the world. I'm going to be rich. In the beginning, you have uninformed optimism, which just means that you go in happy-go-lucky, like this is going to be great. But then you get to the second step, which is now called informed pessimism. This is going to be hard. Like it looked easy, it smelled easy. This is not going to be that. It's going to actually be hard. This is going to be difficult, and that leads to the third step, the valley of despair. And the valley at the bottom of the cycle, if you're thinking of like a semicircle that starts on the left, dips down and goes to the right, and you're on this journey from nobody to success, it starts with, at the top, with uninformed optimism. This will be easy. It moves to informed pessimism. This is going to be hard. Then at the base of the valley, you basically say, this sucks. This blows. I've tried so many times and I'm out of here. And what you do is you start over. And here's what you're training when you do this, by the way. If you've ever given up and it's become a cycle, you develop an identity that says, I'm a failure. And you know what? That's a lie. Nobody's a failure. You're speaking of your history. You're speaking of what didn't go right, but that is actually not who you are. What you are is now a pattern. You have a pattern of starting, optimistically uninformed, becoming uninformed, and then having a reality check that creates some pessimism. Dude, and then it gets so hard that you just give up. But see, the real winners, they go through that same thing. But what's different is they don't interpret failure as a moment of giving up. They will actually push through to the next part, which is now called informed optimism. I now know what I'm facing and I am choosing to be optimistic. And I'm going to bet on an optimist versus a pessimist, like in any race, no matter what the race is, because pessimists give up. and they get crotchetier and they get nastier. And optimists, what they're doing is they're basically saying, I accept that this is challenging. I accept that this is going to be hard, but it's worth it. It's hard and it's worth it instead of it's hard and I'm giving up. And then the fifth and final thing that takes them to is on the other side of the valley. They cross over the gorge and they're now successful. And so it's interesting. I look at my life and it's like, hey, Kris, like, why are you enjoying the fruits of your labors and the level of success you have? And it's like, actually, I'm a professional at failing. I'm a professional, like I do it so hard, so quickly, but I learn my lessons so dang fast and get back up again. And I'm optimistic about the failure. I don't say this is an identity crisis or something wrong with me. I say, no. Anything worthwhile had to be tried 100 times or 1,000 times, or think of Edison's 10,000 light bulbs. Like we just got no give up in us.
Kris, I love this discussion of valley of despair, because I do think that's where most people get stuck. That's why it's called a valley or a rut. And that is where people give up, is when they despair and decide that it's not possible.
And in the valley, you'll find a dragon that needs to be slain. And the dragon is you. There is no protagonist in the story of your life. There are no people that have like set their entire purpose on your demise. It's you. Successful people face themselves in the mirror and realize, wait a second, I am not my failure. I'm going to persist through this. In fact, I'm going to freaking have a good idea through this. I'm going to have a good opinion of myself through this. More importantly, I'm going to learn lessons. This is not a reflection on my character. These are lessons that anyone's going to have to learn if they want to be successful.
Kris, at our events, you share a very powerful story about this idea of the valley of despair and how it stops most people, and more importantly, this conversation about obsession. The treasure hunter.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I don't know that our listeners have heard this story if they haven't been out to an event. And it is
I heard this from Tony Robbins. He tells the story of a man who in the 70s knew that off of the Florida coast 200 years earlier that there was a Spanish ship that went down with like enough wealth to buy your own country. And like this guy was a freaking modern day treasure hunter. And he raised $1 million to get back by this venture. He pulled his family into it, his wife, his kids, and he was out every day at sea, leveraging this money from these freaking loopy, crazy investors to treasure hunt. Now I want to ask you a question. Like if you knew there was like, was it 16 billion or whatever it was, dollars buried under the ocean, and you charter your own boat and a crew and you're going to go look for it. And my question is this: how many days would you be out there at sea before giving up?
How big is that valley of despair?
Like, how big is that valley going to be? We're talking about freaking treasure hunting. Like, you got to give me a break. But I think most people would give up within days, if not weeks.
Kris, the ocean is so big.
Oh, it's huge.
Like if you've ever been out on the ocean, it doesn't take long to get to where you can't see land anymore.
Well, and here's what he did. He basically said, it's out there and I'm going to find it. He built this irrational positivity around his desire that he was the one. And so guess what? He goes an entire year, not a scrap of wood to validate his theory. He's out there 2 years, 3 years. In the 4th year, there's a crazy big storm and his son dies in the storm on the ship. I'll tell you what, most people in that moment, they'd be out. They would give up. Like, can you think of a deeper despair? I'd be blaming myself saying, this is all my fault. If I wasn't built this way, if I hadn't enrolled my son in helping me with this, he would still be alive today. But guess what? Goes back to the shore, raises more money. He's at it 12 more years after 16 years. Stumbles? No. Finds with certainty he must have had for 16 years on one of the greatest treasure hunt finds of our time in modern history, and pulls up, I don't know, like the crazy amount of money, donates it to Spanish like museums, and basically becomes one of the world's wealthiest individuals through freaking treasure hunting. That person had a, no matter what, obsessive, hyper-focused, let's call it, disorder. And you know what? I'm proud, mutant and proud that we say there. Like, I've got a disorder. I'm the monkey that puts my hand on that, and I'm not letting go. I'm not letting go. I'm obsessed. And you know what? The people that we really admire their level of success, they pay a price. And the price that they pay is they won't give up, nor will they interpret failure as a problem. They're just like, oh, this didn't work this way. Let's find out why. And then they become the expert at all the ways it doesn't work. And I'm going to tell you right now, Carson, if you dedicate your life to something that is worthy and you learn all the ways it doesn't work, who on this planet but you is more than likely to figure out what does work? And that's how you become a trailblazer, a pioneer that does what no one else has. And that person's deserving of millions and billions of dollars as a byproduct because they're willing to go where no one else is willing to go.
So how do you do it? How do you not turn back when you're in the valley of despair?
Dude, here's the crazy part. Are you ready? It's a decision. You know what changes? We're like, oh, Kris, take me through, like you come to my events and I do crazy transformative processes. Dude, I'll get you standing on a chair, shouting at the top of your lungs. I'll put a blunted arrow tip on your throat and have you walk into it till either your throat collapses or the arrow breaks. I'll let people walk on fire. And people are like, Kris, why do you do all that? Well, first of all, the reason why it's life-changing for every one of those individuals, I don't make anyone do anything. When they choose to do something harder than what they perceive as difficult, all of a sudden they realize something. They are strong enough. They can do it. They are good enough. They are capable. They are worthy. And this is their purpose. So when you say, how do you do it? Like when I help create these massive transformations of change in people, number one, I don't do it. They do it. I guide the process. But in the end, when they finally change, it all came down to a moment of clarity where they made a different choice. People that say change is hard, change is difficult, you're screwed. Like you can want better things all you want, but you won't get them. Because if you believe that change is difficult, then you're going to struggle so much through the process that if you're not obsessed with the outcome that you want, you'll make yourself emotionally miserable. Oh, it's hard, I'm depressed, I'm angry. And you know what? Those people that spend enough time with those negative emotions, they will and must and have to lose. And that's why I have a great imbalance. The great imbalance between the have and the have-nots. It doesn't come down to luck.
So you don't think this is minimum wage issues?
No, 100% not. No. This is a person's character, and you have to decide who you're going to be. Does your mommy still remind you to clean your room? Are there basic things that you struggle with? Are you struggling to get up in the morning to go to the gym to make your body really nice? Is it hard for you? Are you having a hard time eating the healthy foods instead of the hard ones? Grow up. You're like, you can only tackle so many challenges in your life. You want to build your life around, I struggle with food. You want to build your life with that addiction. You want to build your life around this. Dude, I have a buddy I know right now who has built this incredible empire, getting divorced because he cheated multiple times on his wife. And I'm not going to judge the dude. I'm just going to say, I wonder if he would have made those choices if he knew that he was going to have to do way more than cut his success in half. If he was going to have to almost destroy it, burn it down to the ground for a restart. You know, most of us human beings, we work on one area of our life when we were meant to work on all of them. For me, if you want to be successful, if you want to have it all, what is this have it all show all about? It says that every day you're striving to be a little better than the day before. You should do that financially. You should do that in your relationships. You should do that in your intellect. You should do that in your emotions. Have it all is not, I live in mansions. It's not, I don't have to work. Have it all is I love my life because I'm growing. Tony Robbins says, whatever isn't growing is dying. And the reality is that when we're growing in every dimension of our life, we're having it all. So my goal from the beginning, from the time I was 21 years old, I made a goal for myself. These are the 4 areas of life. I'm going to make noticeable, measurable progress every day, even just a little bit in each one of them. And you know what? We easily underestimate what we can achieve in a decade. We grossly overestimate what we can do in a year. Flip it around. It's if you can just literally be slightly better today than yesterday. I did 14 push-ups instead of 13. I did 13 and a half push-ups instead of 13. That doesn't feel like progress in a day. But if you were to do that for 30 days, I could get this person running a marathon practically. You do that for 90 days, there's no telling who you could become, which is why when I say I'm going to start this business or I'm going to do this real estate deal or I'm going to achieve this really great feat, I put like my monkey, my hand around that banana and I say I'm letting go. And every day you're going to see it show up in my pocketbook. I'm going to pay for this stuff. You're going to see it show up in my schedule. I'm going to schedule my time. I'm going to block my time for this so that I can go to bed at night. And I don't feel good going to bed, Carson, until I can look at each area of my life and say, did you grow? And if it's even just a hairline sliver, I'll put a big fat smile on my face and say, good job, dude. You honored your life.
So I dug it up real quick, Kris. The guy who was this treasure hunter, his name ironically is Mel Fisher.
Mel Fisher.
So he must have felt called to it. 16 years.
And how much money?
The slide here doesn't list it, but I can pull it up. But
it was hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
It's so much.
I mean, it was $500 million or something. I don't know.
It's gold. It's a ship filled with gold that he finally finds. The question that I constantly look at that is the difficult part of this is he took 16 years doing this. Yeah. How did he not, like, put yourself in his shoes, year 15. How do you stop yourself from that internal dialogue of saying it's never going to work?
Okay, I got to give you three.
Because that's why we call it the valley of despair, because we tell ourselves.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a couple more paradigm shifts.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about how you move from I don't know what I don't know to now taking great mastery and making it unconsciously available. We've also talked in this episode about the emotional cycle of change. And that is all about moving from uninformed optimism to informed optimism, where basically you now have the emotional mojo to ride out the valley of despair until you become successful. But I want to give you a new one right now. I have a belief that has served me powerfully that a lot of people think I'm super kooky for. And you know what? I have a list of very polarizing beliefs that have really gotten me place, because I believe that in this universe, there's truth with a capital T, but the majority of beliefs that we have are just that. They're beliefs. They're not truths. They're little t stuff. And one of them is, I do whatever it takes. I do whatever it takes. It's that Imagine Dragons song, whatever it takes, right? And I believe that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. It's out there. I'm going to find it, and I'll do whatever it takes. And I've just beat that into my psyche. So I'm not a person that gives up. Another belief that I have that's super polarizing is everything goes my way. I literally every day have a ritual when I wake up that, aside from working out my body and aside from like proper nutrition and meditation, I do some breakthrough work. And there's a number of phrases that I rehearse that get me in a state that can face any negativity. It's like Kevin Hart once taught me in a private little shindig. He basically said, Kris, you have to have a morning routine so that every day when negativity arises, you can meet it with reinforced positivity. And so every day I assume the negative is going to come. But when it comes, it's not like, listen, if you've ever said, I'm having a bad day, that's someone that has a weak morning that doesn't do anything to prepare themselves for the reality that things don't go your way. But if you reinforce positivity first, then when that happens, you've got the strength to overcome it, because you learn this one truth. You're greater than any obstacle or circumstance or person you're ever going to face. There is no negativity bigger than you, no matter how big the problem, no matter how unassailable it seems. You have the power to win if you can make the decision that you have. So I've got some beliefs that definitely set me up to face any type of negativity. And one of them is whatever it takes. And the other one, everything goes my way. Because the moment it hits the fan, I stop and ask, how's this benefiting me? How is this going my way? How is this good for me? What am I going to learn that I couldn't have learned any other way? How is this in service of my future? And those questions, guess what they do? They uncover the silver lining. They uncover what champions learn that the unconscious never will. So that's one thing. That's one paradigm shift, is you got to develop a belief system that's going to serve you. But the other one is you have to learn this one thing. You can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a
different result.
Right? Like Albert Einstein coined that very famously as the definition of insanity. It didn't work. Try it again. It didn't work. Don't be stupid. Don't try it again. Tweak it. Learn from it. Learning should lead to tweaks. And so I have a different process that I use, Carson, which puts me in a growth mindset. Part of mastery is that you're growing. Think about it this way. I'm learning to play the piano and I keep making the same mistake, but I don't learn. So I keep practicing it wrong. This is why the phrase practice makes perfect isn't true. Imperfect practice makes imperfect. Only perfect practice makes perfect. In other words, you have to learn how to do it the right way. If you learn how to finger a keyboard and you don't use home row, you could get really good at like plinking. You'll never be near as fast as someone that actually learns proper technique. So you have to practice it the right way. And so I got a 3-step model that I use for this that's about knowing standards. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, by the way, don't apply standards to, unfortunately, any part of their life, and few have few standards at all. I grew up in a very, very religious community. My family, devout Christian, and there was always this talk of standards. Like, for example, morality. They're like the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, like, what you should and shouldn't do as a 12 or 14-year-old. And, my parents would say things like, hey, we're not going to watch rated R movies when you're really young, or even when you're older, there's some bad habits to learn. They had really strong standards. They had stronger standards about language in the home. If I used some language, I was going to be punished. I had standards about what media I could be exposed to. I had standards around when I could date, and if I could just date or actually like have a girlfriend and go steady and serious. Like, teenagers are in that interesting place of life that if they don't have certain guidelines or restrictions, and you just go for having it all without standards, you're going to give your body what it wants. And if you listen to your body, drugs, sex, and rock and roll, your body is going to request, I can do drugs. Oh, that feels good. We should do that. Your body's going to say, do what feels good. And I'm just going to say that if you don't place restrictions on your appetites, there's a really good chance one day you're going to wake up in a ditch, not woken up. I hate to break for the party goers that are out there. I'm like, hey, we wear a belt for a reason so that in the unlikely event that I'm in an accident and the car rolls 9 times, I might survive. It was called a safety belt. I know it sucks. I know it was restricted, but it was good for you. Same thing like texting in the car. It's like, take my phone away from me. I know I'm going to use that the wrong way, and I'm going to put someone else's and my life and my family's future, my children at risk. So we need restrictions. I didn't understand that was true in business, in real estate, in investing. I didn't know that was true in boundaries with relationships. I didn't know that there was standards for every freaking part of life. Like, for example, have you ever met that person that goes to the gym, but they don't really go to the gym? They just want to go, they just want to hang out and talk to people. I'm like, all right, I get it. You have super low standards. You want to talk for 45 minutes, and then you're going to take a third of the weight that you should, and you're going to move it a few times and go home and pat yourself on the back and say, good job, fat 100-pound overweight belly. We went to the gym today, right?
And then you'll be upset when you don't get the result.
And then you're like, I go to the gym. Why isn't it happening? I'm like, because you're not going to the gym.
Don't have standards.
Yeah. So you develop standards. And so here's the 3 things that I always do. By the way, if I've said anything, if you're listening to this and I have offended you, that's impossible. Offense is a personal choice. I can't offend you. If I say something that's not PC, but you get mad, just real quick, I have to tangent for a second. I have this little saying that has freed me from unnecessary suffering in life. The person with the problem is the person with the problem. Dude, I'll get people that watch my gear and they'll be all they come from a poor background. They come from, we didn't have money. So they listen to me talking about all this abundance and opportunity and possibility. Some people are inspired yeah, dude, this is good stuff. I'm going to freaking subscribe. I'm going to watch your YouTube channel, your TikTok, your social. Dude, I'm going to freaking I want to learn from you. You're my mentor. Dude, on the other side of the stick, I'm like, I cannot believe you just said that, you arrogant, greedy, rich. And I'm like, dude, you're allowed to feel that way. Just understand, I can't offend you, even if I were to say the most inappropriate thing. Offense is always a choice. So I just got to drop that because I think there's probably some people in today's episode that are probably seething and pissed a little bit at some of my rhetoric. And I'm like, listen, I might not be here for you. You might not be for me. You definitely shouldn't subscribe. If I piss you off a couple of times, it's probably going to happen 100 more times if you keep listening.
Kris, I think by saying that you can't offend anybody, you offended a bunch of
I'm positive and I'm like, you pansies. Oh, that offended one of the quadrants. I'm like, listen, we have never been in a more victim-y, mentally weak, pathetic state where I'm a little bit ashamed that humanity is teaching the next generation that these are good things. And I'm like, if I go around with the goal of not offending anyone, I'm going to get nothing done. It's not that I'm tactless. It's not that I want to be rude. In fact, I don't want to be any of those things. But I am here to say, wake up. I am here to say, hey, if you're my tribe, if you're following me, listen up. We got to get something done today. And if you're too busy mentally managing all of this stupid garbage that's out there in the media, good luck. Turn the news off. Find a way to stay informed without wasting your life checked into all of that bullcrap that is moving the needle and trying to make offense the purpose of life. I do everything in my power not to offend people. I'm like, you know what? You have got to get a life because that one sucks. And be honest, people that get offended, they're grudge holders. People that offended, they waste time. They waste their life. People that get offended, that like make that like their life's purpose, they are stooped so deep in victimhood. But you know what they suffer from? They don't know that they don't know. And my mentor, after 7 years and $1 million of paying him, the most powerful thing he ever taught me was, Kris, the most dangerous information is what you don't know. So you can be successful or you can be offended. I highly doubt you can be both. Highly doubt it. So I'd make a choice. I'd get obsessed over the right thing instead of the wrong thing. I think playing the game of am I or am I not offended could be the dumbest game, could be the best waste of life. It could be the absolute best way to like waste the miraculous, precious gift of heart-beating, breathing air that you have. So that takes me to standards, which basically means this: 3 steps. I play the standard game. Number 1, you have to know your standard. Number 2, you have to meet your standard. Number 3, you have to raise your standard. Here's what that means. I am making $20,000 a year at my first job. I'm first year working as a full-time adult. And some of you have heard me talk about this because it was so powerful for me to recognize that the average American is making over $40,000 a year, and I'm making less than half of that. So I said, I'm an adult. I get that I'm in college. I get that I'm full-time, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to raise my standard. I expect that if I work full-time this next year, even if I'm a full-time student, I deserve to at least make what the average American makes, which means I'm going to double my income this year. I raise my standard. I obsess over it, Carson. I focus on it. I put all my energy into it. And I believed that I was actually entitled to at least what the average American, because I'm working hard. I should at least get what the average person gets. 12 months later, I'd made over $50,000 a year. And I had been practicing for 365 days my new standard. And it came time to actually do my resolutions. I'm like, okay, Kris, you're about to pay taxes. It's a new year. What do you want? And because I had practiced obsessively 365 days with no matter what energy of double my income, guess what I decided to do the next year? I decided to double my income again. And that year, I spent another 365 days enforcing that with complete faith that that's exactly what would happen. Made over $100,000 that year. Doubled it again, made $250,000. Doubled it again, made $500,000. But you know when it stopped working, Carson? Because here's what I kept doing. I had established my standard. I'm going to double my income. What I didn't know is that I had a little janky rule that said, Kris, when you get to $500,000, you have to stop. I'm like, wait a second. Why do I got to stop at $500,000? It's like, because if you double your income, that's $1 million. You've already increased your net worth $1 million in a single year. Do you think that you can actually take home money in the bank $1 million in a year? And I didn't. I was scared.
Doubt.
I did. I doubted. Because I doubted, guess what happened that year? I went through the motions. Oh yeah, totally gonna, whatever it takes, I'm gonna double my income this year. You know what happened at the end of the year? I made $500,000. I'm like, oh, that was a fluke. This has been working the other years. We'll just try it again. $500,000 the next year. Next year, $500,000. The year after, when it was $500,000, I got pissed. And I said, okay, fine. I'll admit it. I don't believe that I can bring home $1 million cash in a single year. And what I did was I allowed what was unconsciously incompetent to me to become consciously competent. Fine, I'll admit the truth. By the way, truth sets you free. So once I did, I found a mentor. I had an insane, crazy breakthrough. And I said, it's time to catch up. I'm not going to double my income. I'm going to quadruple my income. And that year I quadrupled my income. So this only works if you know what your standard is. And you should ask, do you have the right standards? Did you know that you should have standards with money and know it's not what your boss is willing to pay you? When you know your standard, you then should do everything you can to meet it if you're not already. And if you've met your standard, you need to raise your standard. Know it, meet it, raise it. And I've been using that in my entire life. And guess what? I look at my bench press now, how many plates I have on the rack when I'm doing that, or I look at the marathons that I've run in the past, or I look at the businesses, that I've been able to successfully grow from all the ones in the beginning that I couldn't successfully grow. And all I'm doing is practicing nobility. Better today than yesterday. So I highly recommend that if you're not getting the growth that you want in life, I would ask you, do you know, if you're like, I want to make more money, but it's not working. Do you know your financial standards? Have you done everything you can? Have you obsessed to meet them? And then when you met them, did you raise them? Carson, do you know how many people are actually meeting a low standard? They're unhappy with it. and they're not really raising it. Not with obsession, not with the focus that we're talking about here. Not that'll get them through the valley of despair, not that will actually help them understand what they don't know, which is their blind spot that's hurting them. It all comes full circle.
So along with this idea of obsession, I can't help but notice that there is a certain level of commitment attached to it. We were talking about Mel Fisher. I pulled it up here on Wikipedia. Kris, it was $450 million cache that they discovered.
Okay, so about $500 million. Yeah.
40 tons of gold and silver, 114,000 Spanish silver coins, gold coins, Colombian emeralds, 1,000 silver ingots. Like this is crazy.
Yeah.
And I did the math real quick. And if you break that up over the 16 years, he was earning roughly $28 million a year.
Wow. So he was basically paid better than most pro high-level athletes.
Yeah. But
That's so funny.
but I have to ask myself, how many of us have stuck with the goal for 16 years? That's a certain level of obsession.
That's
It's
either
uncanny.
a disorder. That's either a disorder.
ASD,
or
attention surplus disorder.
Attention surplus disorder. Yeah, I give attention surplus to everything that is worthy of my focus, even to a fault. My wife knows it. She's like, she sees me drilled on and something. She's like, "Hey, Kris, can I talk to you?" And I almost just don't even respond. I'm like, "Hey, honey, I love you, love you, love you. But right now, I need to get this particular task to full completion, and then I will give you my surplus attention." And then I do. It's an all or nothing game. Some people say that's extreme. Some people ridicule that. Some people think that that's risky behavior. Some people think that that is unrealistic. I call it strength.
I think most people would see the results and have to admit that it is strength.
Yeah. Well, and I'm hoping that, today some of these ideas, I hope that there's one gold nugget that lands, hopefully more, that just says, you know what? I need to reevaluate some of my standards. I need to reevaluate my approach. I need to reevaluate when I give up, when maybe I shouldn't be. I need to reevaluate how much time I'm actually spending inundated, hyper-focused, obsessed with this thing that I've claimed that I want. Because here's what most people do, Carson. They give lip service to what they want, and they love telling people their commitments, but then they don't back it up with money and time. And those are the two resources you have to back up every obsession with.
I feel like a lot of the times people mislead themselves is when they're dabbling and think they deserve the result.
Yep. And by the way, especially today, and I'm not just talking about millennials, I'm talking about Gen Z that's on the horizon, and we have insanely low standards for effort. And here's what I like. We also have really high standards for leverage. I'm actually expecting things to go better. I need leverage. I need to be smarter versus working harder. That's a benefit. Just don't give up or don't expect something for nothing, because you get what you put in.
Kris, you have counseled people for years to find mentors because it bridges that gap.
Yep.
And I've heard it asked many a time, like how to find a mentor. You see yourself as a mentor. How can people work with us? How can people leverage your bank of knowledge?
I want to move backwards a little bit. I think that you should test out mentors by reading their books. Readers are leaders, and I think that you should be reading at least 2 books a month. If you're not, then you definitely think that you've got it all figured out. If you're not reading a minimum of 2 books a month, what you're really saying is, I got it. What I know is enough. Well, let me ask you, do you have what you want? Are you fulfilled? Are you producing what you want? Are you getting the results you want? If not, freaking go back to school. Read books. You should be reading lots of books, at least 2 a month. That means that you should be taking down at least 24 books a year. That's not a huge ask. That's 30 minutes of audio booking a day. It's not a lot, but you need to do this if you're serious about growing your life so that you get out of the I know mindset. The I know, dude, and here's the irony. The people with I know mindset are the people that are furthest from the results. And that's why you've stagnated. Most stagnate early. Most stagnate before they've done anything where suicide could actually start to look appealing, because they don't really feel like their self-worth feels low because they haven't achieved a whole lot. It's like, wait a second. You're expecting too much for the wrong energy. Take the advice of everything that we've covered today. Go further, go deeper, get more obsessed. Hunt further. I would say read some of my books. If they really connect with you, then I might be the mentor for you. And there's ways to even privately mentor with me one-on-one. There's ways to partner with me on business deals, on real estate deals. There's ways to get proximity to me. I have events, I have digital events that I put on. And if you like my information, then you should be saying, okay, Kris, beyond social, beyond podcast, beyond reading, what does aggressive look like? Dude, it's simple. Contact my company and say, Kris is my mentor. What are all of the aggressive options? Because I'll tell you what, that is what I do. I spend money every year. I lay out money. Like, it's the easiest check that I write. Carson, we were at a retreat last week. How many events did we actually talk about last week? Yeah, 3 different events in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm asking you to be away from your family for 9 days in events this next year. Why would I do that?
Because it levels you up.
And there's a dude that's retiring next year who has 50 years worth of experience that is way light years beyond where you and I are at. And I need you and the other member of our team and me to go hang out and be in the airspace to absorb that knowledge. And by the way, all in all, let me just add it up. That's about $30,000, maybe $40,000 in upcoming classes. And some people are like, oh yeah, Kris, well, that's easy for you. 40,000 is like, that's nothing. Why would you actually do that? I'm like, how could you not do that? I'm like, are you kidding me? The way that you get somewhere is choosing to be that way first. I was investing in myself when I had nothing. I invested myself when it put me deeply in debt because I became obsessed with this one truth. Once you find your mentor, you need to get in their airspace and mimic them, read them, copycat them. And that doesn't mean that you're trying to become a carbon copy of them. It means that you should keep all the good. And when your spirit says no to some of their stuff, then honor that. And that's how you find yourself. Take the best parts of your mentors and leave the stuff behind that doesn't honor you because you're not meant to be like them. You're meant to get the best from them and then move on to the next mentor. Right now, I'm working on my 30th mentor. And I'll never stop. I hope to have hundreds of mentors in my entire life. I hope to spend millions more dollars on mentoring than I've already spent. Because the more I invest in myself, the bigger I get, the more that I create, and the more people that I help, and the more good that I do, and the more fulfilled that I am. Because we said it earlier, if you're not growing, you are dying. So take the miracle of life, the gift that you've been given, and grow. How do you do that? Well, listen to the episode again.
Love it. So Kris, you have a couple books, The Straight Path to Real Estate Wealth, which a lot of our guests, of our listeners who are interested in real estate are going to find that very interesting. But I would actually like to prescribe something different today.
Okay.
If someone really wants to become successful in real estate, I think they need your third book.
Yeah, I wrote a book called Limitless, and it is the book on the mindset of the ultimate achiever. It basically says that in life, no one escapes childhood without picking up thousands of limiting beliefs. And those beliefs will never be revisited and altered or improved upon because it's what we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. Worse, we mistake these ideas as identity. Like, this is who I am. And it's not true. They're ideas from a young mind that didn't know better, that observed a lot and then misinterpreted heavily. And so that's why you'll see adults that will sometimes act like children, cry like children, fight like children. And that's because they are. They've got in their board of directors, up in their mind, they got someone sitting at the head of the table every moment. And sometimes it's a very mature 30-year-old and sometimes it's a very mature 3-year-old. And so, I basically take people on a journey of cleaning out all of the unresolved beliefs from our childhood. Sounds a lot like psychology. It is. This is one of the things that I mastered. I could talk to any person on the planet that says, Kris, I've struggled with this for decades. In 20 minutes, we'll be done. That's not ego. That's not arrogance. It's fact. That's a promise. I get 20 minutes with you, and whatever you've suffered from, whether it's body, relationship, identity, belief, that's all fixable because they're all rooted in beliefs instead of truths. And they're meant to be altered, and most people don't know that. Probably the biggest secret that I have that most people never hear about, it's funny you brought it up, is that when people actually mentor with me or they drop $500,000, $250,000, or whatever they're going to do, or they get in my inexpensive masterminds to get proximity to me, is I am going to dig in their head and I'm going to find the most damaging, limiting notions that are holding them back. I'm going to freaking pluck them out like it was the easiest thing I've ever done. I'm going to have them look at them, be disgusted by them, find the motivation to change them, and then show them how to make it permanent, replace it with what is good. And when you possess the knowledge, Carson, of how to replace limiting beliefs with limitless or empowering beliefs, Dude, you become an unstoppable force. Like you start controlling your transformation. So yeah, you could get my real estate books or Conscious Creator or, some of the other things that I've written. But when someone says, Kris, who are you really? And what's the deepest training you provide? The book is called Limitless. You can find it at Amazon, anywhere else. And you can audio it, you can read it, you can download it. That book right there really shares the secret to my universe. It feels like a very inspired message that came to me through God. And it's my way of helping people change what matters most, which is ironically not making millions of dollars. That's easy. Given time and the right actions, making millions of dollars is easy. What we do is far more critical, far more important, which is you learn how to live a fulfilling life, not one of achievement alone, but a life of fulfillment and happiness.
Well, and we talked today about the valley of despair. And you want to know why people give up in the valley of despair? I think it's because of the voices in our head that tell you you're not good enough, you're not smart enough.
Not fast enough, not smart enough, you can't do it, you're never going to make it, you're not built for this, it's for somebody else, it's not your dream, all this bull crap.
So if anybody is pursuing a big result or some type of success, they're going to have to pass through the valley of despair. And the only way to get through it without giving up, exactly what you teach in your book, Limitless.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, dude, I can't believe how much we got out of today's episode. I want to thank everyone for listening. You can just go to kriskrohn.com or look me up on Amazon or frankly, anywhere in the world and grab grab the gear that resonates with you. But here's what I would say as a final thought, which is seize your life, take control of what's yours, stop allowing life to dictate and your past for that matter, to dictate your future. You could literally wake up in this moment and be who you've always wanted to become. I believe in you that you can do that because that's exactly what happened to me. You rewind the clock 20 years ago and you have this chubby, pathetic, unhappy human being that desperately wanted to please others and win and succeed and make that someone special in their life happy. And I look at that sweet, cute, little, adorable, pathetic fool, and I'm just so grateful that he chose his journey of growth and that every day he decided, I'm going to be better today than yesterday. Because you stack that up day after day after day, that's now what, tens of thousands of days later, and every one of us has the chance to meet our potential. Every one of us has the chance to become something great. It just starts today by being better than yesterday.